The lights in the studio dimmed, and the air felt heavier than usual. The show's host, a respected journalist known for tough questions, looked across the table at the guest sitting quietly in front of him, CanYaman's mother. For years, she had remained silent, avoiding interviews, headlines, and gossip. She had watched her sons rise to fame, the whirlwind of love stories, the rumors, and the endless scrutiny, all from a distance. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had agreed to speak. The world had been waiting for this. Ever since the rumors involving Sara Bluma, the woman who many believed came between Can and his longtime love, Demet Özdemir, exploded online, fans demanded answers. Did Can's family approve of Sara? What did his mother really think? And most of all, what had really happened behind closed doors? As the cameras rolled, the host leaned forward and asked the question that silenced the entire studio. "Mrs. Yaman, what do you think of Sara Bluma?" For a moment, she didn't speak. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked down, collecting her thoughts. Then she lifted her head, and her voice, calm but filled with emotion, broke the silence. "I have stayed quiet for a long time. I've seen things written about my son, about his heart, about the women in his life. But there's a point when a mother can't stay silent anymore." The host's eyes widened. "So you're saying some of the stories were true?" She nodded slowly. Some were. Some were cruel lies. But what hurt the most was seeing my son's kindness taken for weakness. The audience leaned forward in their seats. The tension was thick. Everyone knew this was leading to Sara Bluma. The host continued softly, "And Sara? What kind of person is she, in your eyes?" For a few seconds, she didn't answer. Then she smiled sadly. "Sara is complicated. When she came into my son's life, he was already under pressure, from the media, from fans, from his own emotions. She brought peace at first, but later, she brought storms." The host tried to hide his surprise. "Storms?" She sighed deeply. Every mother knows when her child is happy. I could see it in his eyes when Demet was around, that light, that joy. But when Sara came along, something changed. He smiled less. He started to close off. That's when I knew, something was wrong. Her words hit like thunder. The audience gasped, and within seconds, social media exploded. Hashtags like #CanYaman Mother Speaks and #SaraBlumaTruth started trending. The comment sections filled with fans saying things like, "She finally said it," and "A mother always knows." As the interview went on, her tone softened. "I don't hate Sara. I never did. But I think she came into my son's life at a time when he needed healing, not confusion. And when a person isn't ready to love, no matter how much you care, everything falls apart." The host leaned back, sensing the weight of her words. "So you believe Sara was not right for him?" She smiled faintly, almost with pain. "Let's just say, not every story that looks beautiful on Instagram is beautiful in real life." The audience applauded gently. And in that moment, the entire world felt the emotion behind every word she spoke, not as a celebrity's mother, but as a woman who had watched her son's heartbreak in silence. The studio lights glimmered softly on her face as she took a deep breath. The audience was silent, nobody dared interrupt her. This wasn't just another celebrity interview. This was a mother finally opening up after years of watching her son's private life torn apart by gossip and speculation. She adjusted the microphone slightly and continued, her voice trembling. "You know, people think fame makes everything easy, money, attention, love. But fame is heavy. It changes the people around you, not the person you are." And when Sara came into Can's life, he was already exhausted. He had given so much of himself to the world that there was very little left for him. The host leaned forward. "Do you mean she took advantage of that?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I don't think Sara ever meant to hurt him. But sometimes two people come together, and one of them is already wounded. My son was still carrying the ghost of something that came before, something he never fully healed from." The audience instantly understood. They knew who she meant, Demet Özdemir. She continued, her eyes softening. After Demet, he told me, Mom, I don't want to talk about love anymore. I just want peace. And when Sara appeared, she seemed to bring that peace. She was calm, kind, different. But peace built on pain never lasts. The host nodded slowly. You've been quiet for years. Why speak now? She hesitated for a moment, glancing toward the cameras. Because I saw how people judged him after everything. Every time he smiled, they said it was fake. Every time he worked, they said he was running away. They never saw the truth, that behind all of that strength, my son is still just a human being with a heart that feels too much. She paused, taking a shaky breath. And when I saw Sara's interviews, the way she talked, the things she implied, I couldn't sit quietly anymore. The host looked surprised. You're referring to her comments about Ken on Italian TV? She nodded. Yes. I heard her say, some men act strong, but they're weak when it comes to love. I knew she was talking about my son. And it broke me. Because if she truly loved him, she would never say those words publicly. The room went still again. Cameras zoomed in on her face, the sorrow in her eyes was undeniable. She wasn't angry. She was heartbroken. She went on softly, a mother's heart can sense everything. When Can and Sara started drifting apart, I could feel it even before he told me. He stopped calling as often. His messages became shorter. I knew something was wrong. Then one night, he came home to Istanbul quietly, without telling anyone. He sat at the kitchen table, and I saw it in his eyes, that look only a mother recognizes. The host whispered, "What did he say?" Tears welled up in her eyes. He just said, "Mom, I tried. But I can't love someone who keeps reminding me of who I used to be." The audience gasped softly. The pain in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just gossip. This was real. And that's why I'm here, she continued firmly. Not to attack anyone. Not to defend anyone. But to remind people that my son isn't made of stone. He feels. He loves. He gets hurt. And sometimes the people who look the strongest are the ones who fall the hardest. The host's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Mrs. Yaman, do you think he still loves Demet? She smiled sadly, her eyes glistening. Love like that doesn't disappear. It just hides where no one can see it. The audience broke into quiet applause, some wiping away tears. At that moment, it was no longer just an interview, it was a confession of a mother who had carried her son's pain in silence for far too long. The air in the studio grew colder as the questions deepened. The host, now leaning closer, sensed that there was something more, something the audience had not yet heard. The viewers at home could feel it too. Every word that came from CanYaman's mother seemed to carry a weight years in the making. Mrs. Yaman, the host said softly, you mentioned earlier that there were storms between Can and Sara. Can you tell us what really happened? She hesitated. For a moment, it looked like she wouldn't answer. But then she looked straight into the camera, her eyes tired but steady. There was one night, she said slowly, that changed everything. The audience fell completely silent. She continued, it was after a big event in Rome. They were both there, smiling for the cameras, looking perfect. But after that night, my son called me. It was very late. He said, Mom, I can't do this anymore. The host whispered, do what? Pretend, she replied. He told me that the person everyone saw in those photos wasn't the real Sara anymore. She had become distant, cold. He said she didn't understand how heavy fame can be, that she wanted the spotlight, not the silence. The crowd gasped. Some clutched their mouths, others whispered to each other. Mrs. Yaman continued, her voice cracking slightly. He said something I'll never forget. He said, Mom, she doesn't see me anymore, just what being with me gives her. Her words hit the studio like thunder. The host, visibly shaken, tried to speak carefully. Are you saying she used him? The mother shook her head. No. I think Sara liked him. But she didn't love him. And my son, he doesn't know how to love halfway. When he gives everything. When he's hurt, he breaks completely. She looked down for a moment, gathering herself. There was also something else. Someone said something that night. A name. The host frowned. A name? She nodded, eyes glistening. Demet. The audience gasped again. He told me that during an argument. Sara brought up Demet. She said something like, "You still compare me to her." And that was the moment I think he realized she was right. Tears welled in her eyes as she continued, "You can't build love on the ruins of another one." My son thought he had moved on, but he hadn't. That night, he saw it clearly. The host sat back, visibly moved. Did he ever tell Demet? She smiled faintly. No. But he didn't need to. Some things don't need words. They're written in the way you look at someone, even after years. She paused, her hands trembling slightly. And that's when he ended things. Quietly. No press, no statement. He just walked away. The host lowered his voice. And Sara? Her expression softened. Sara was hurt. I think she didn't expect it. She loved the idea of him, the actor, the fame, the world he represented, but not the man who needed peace. When he left, she started talking. Giving interviews. And that's when I realized I had to protect my son's truth. The audience began clapping softly, moved by her honesty. The host smiled gently. You've said so much tonight, Mrs. Yaman. If Ken is watching this right now, what would you like to say to him? Her eyes shimmered with tears. I'd tell him I'm proud of him. Proud for loving deeply, for falling hard, and for standing up when it hurt the most. And I'd tell him this, sometimes, losing someone isn't the end of love. It's how we learn who truly loved us back. The applause filled the studio. For the first time, her silence had turned into strength, and her words had revealed more than any rumor ever could. The moment the interview ended, the video spread like wildfire. Within minutes, every major entertainment outlet in Turkey and Italy was replaying it. Headlines exploded across social media. CanYaman's mother speaks, Sara Bluma exposed, and a mother's truth breaks the internet. Clips of her emotional confession circulated everywhere, the way her voice trembled when she mentioned Demet's name, the sadness in her eyes, the calm power in her words. The world was stunned. It wasn't a scandalous outburst or a bitter accusation. It was something deeper, a mother's pain, beautifully told. By midnight, fans flooded Twitter and Instagram with comments. She spoke with grace. Now we understand what really happened. A mother always knows. The hashtag CanYaman Mother Speaks became the #1 trending topic. But the storm had only begun. The next morning, Sara Bluma broke her silence on Instagram. She posted a single photo, a black and white close-up of her face, eyes swollen, mascara slightly smudged. The caption read, "Everyone has their version of the truth. I'll tell mine soon." Within minutes, her post was flooded with both support and anger. Some defended her, saying she had been unfairly portrayed. Others accused her of exploiting the relationship for attention. The internet split into two, Team Can and Team Sara. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Demet Özdemir was quietly watching everything unfold. She hadn't commented, hadn't posted, hadn't said a word. But one of her close friends leaked to the press that Demet had seen the interview and that it had deeply moved her. One journalist described it perfectly, while Sara spoke in headlines, Demet stayed silent. And sometimes, silence is the loudest answer. Later that day, paparazzi caught Can arriving at his mother's home. Cameras flashed as he hugged her tightly outside the door. He didn't speak to the press, but his gesture said enough. He was proud of her for speaking the truth. Inside, the moment was emotional. His mother looked at him through tears and said, "I didn't mean to bring back the past, my son. I just couldn't bear seeing lies replace your truth. Ken smiled softly. You didn't bring back the past, Mom. You reminded people who I really am. That evening, the TV channels began replaying the footage again, but this time with a twist. They showed clips of Can and Demet from years ago, behind-the-scenes footage, candid smiles, moments of laughter. The headlines read, "The Love That Never Faded." Demet, seeing those old clips circulate, felt a tear slip down her cheek. It wasn't sadness. It was nostalgia, mixed with a quiet sense of closure. She whispered to herself, she said what I couldn't. As the days passed, Sara released her own statement, shorter, colder, and far less emotional. Love between two public people is never private, she wrote. I wish them peace. I wish her silence. But by then, the world had already chosen what to believe. People saw the difference between her tone and the mother's sincerity. They could feel what was real. In one of the most shared comments online, a fan wrote, Sara posted a statement. Can's mother spoke from her heart. That's the difference. Weeks later, when the noise finally began to fade, one thing was clear, the interview hadn't just revealed the truth about Sara Bluma. It had reminded the world that behind every story, behind every rumor, there are real people, real hearts, and real pain. And for CanYaman, it meant more than anyone could understand. Because his mother had said the one thing he'd been too afraid to say himself, that love, once real, never truly disappears. It just hides behind fame, waiting for the right moment to be remembered. Days passed, but the echoes of that interview refused to fade. Everywhere Can went, whispers followed. In cafes, on set, at airports, people spoke in hushed tones, that's the man whose mother made the world cry. Yet for the first time in a long while, he didn't mind. Because for once, the story being told wasn't a lie. He sat on his balcony one evening, overlooking the Bosphorus. The city was alive with lights, cars, laughter, but his mind was still, his heart heavy and calm all at once. His phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, but the words made his breath catch. She's a strong woman, your mother. She spoke with her heart. He knew the number. He didn't need to check. Demet. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries years of unsaid things. He typed back slowly, deliberately, like someone afraid of breaking a fragile moment. She only said what I never could. The message was delivered. No reply came. But deep down, he knew she'd read it, and that was enough. Meanwhile, at her own apartment, Demet sat on her couch, staring at the city skyline. She hadn't planned to reach out. She told herself for years that everything was over, that their story had been written and closed. But hearing his mother speak had reopened something inside her, not pain, not longing, something softer. For the first time, she didn't feel angry or nostalgic. She felt peace. Because the truth was finally out there, not twisted by tabloids or shouted through rumors, but spoken by someone who had loved Can as purely as she once had. The next day, paparazzi caught Can and his mother together again, walking hand in hand along the seaside. They didn't hide. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but they just smiled. His mother turned to him and whispered, "See, my son? Sometimes the truth sets you free, even when it hurts." He nodded quietly. "You were right to speak." She looked at him with a warmth only a mother could have. "I didn't speak for them," she said softly. "I spoke for you, for the boy who forgot he's still allowed to feel." A few weeks later, Can attended an award event in Istanbul, his first public appearance since the storm. He wore a classic black suit, confident but humble. As he walked the red carpet, a reporter called out, "Can. One word about Sara?" He stopped, looked into the camera, and replied calmly, "I wish her peace." Then, before moving on, he added, "And I thank my mother, for reminding the world who I really am." The audience erupted in applause when the clip aired. People could see it, he wasn't acting. He was finally free of the masks, the pressure, the endless noise. Later that night, after the event, he returned home to find a small note left on his doorstep. There was no signature, but he recognized the handwriting instantly. Some truths don't hurt, they heal. D. He smiled as he folded the paper and tucked it into his wallet. And so, in the quiet that followed all the chaos, something had changed. No reconciliation. No grand declarations. Just understanding, the kind that doesn't need words anymore. The interview that had started as a mother's confession ended up becoming something much greater, a healing moment for everyone involved. For Sara, who finally stepped away from the spotlight. For Demet, who found closure. And for Can, who remembered that even after heartbreak and fame, he was still capable of being loved, deeply, quietly, and truly. Weeks later, as cameras caught one last image of Can and his mother sharing tea on their balcony, she looked at him lovingly and said, "Now they all know your truth, my son." He nodded with a peaceful smile. "Yes, Mom. But the only truth that matters is that I'm finally at peace." And with that, the story that had begun with tears and silence ended with calm, a rare, beautiful kind of calm that only comes when truth and love finally find their way home.